Morning, all. Happy draft day. So we're going to see a lot of buyout news and a lot of moves being made from here going forward through the rest of the week. Carl Alzner is on waivers for the purpose of a buyout. I'm wearing a Montreal jersey because I figure Montreal fans may approve of this move. The Alzner deal looked bad from the time it was signed until now, and here we are. So Alzner on waivers for a buyout from the Montreal Canadiens. And he's not alone. Wenberg may very well find himself on a buyout. Apparently, Columbus has been trying to find a home for Wenberg. They've been shopping him around. And if there's no takers, he may end up on the waiver wire tomorrow for a buyout. It could be today, technically, yes, but probably tomorrow. And then Abdelkader has been waived by the Detroit Red Wings for a buyout. So a lot of the contracts that we talk about as being potentially bad contracts or just plain flat-out bad contracts are in the process of being bought out and eliminated as teams try to stay below cap, try to free up some cap space, and save themselves some money along the way. Interestingly enough, I know I'm bouncing around the board a bit, I apologize, but there's a lot of stuff going on. Lundqvist may very well be on his way to Washington. According to Bob McKenzie, they are the likely frontrunner, the clear frontrunner. And Bob McKenzie, all of a sudden, the retired Bob McKenzie, has started tweeting again, and he's going to be at Free Agent Frenzy and at the draft table for TSN. So, and I'm guessing that's all virtual as well. Very, very likely. So, yeah, Lundqvist apparently could end up being a Capital on Friday, which is going to be weird. There's no way for that not to be weird. Henrik, of course, is a Ranger against the Capitals. There have been many, many battles between the teams, and so it would be weird to see him as a Capital, but stranger things have happened. So, yeah, watch for that. Because the idea would be then that you'd have Lundqvist there for a year, maybe 2 years, and he could help Samsonov along the way and still put up, 25 starts a year. Speaking of the year, the NHL and the NHLPA have now bumped back the start date, the target start date. The target start date of December 1st looked like that was a pretty good idea initially. But now as we're, seeing where the world is at, and it's October 6th, the idea of starting the hockey season up in 7 weeks' time is just, it's not going to happen. And so soon after the bubble situation for Tampa and Dallas in particular, I'm guessing that the union said, we'll aim for January 1st. And again, and I know, I don't talk about the whole COVID thing in these videos because you guys hear about it in all the news and it's all over everywhere on everything all the time. But the basic idea is simple. You want to have fans in attendance so that you're not losing as much money. They know they're going to lose money. By January 1st, the idea is that you're going to have on some level of vaccine. And I don't know which ones, and I don't get into that in these videos because it's not what people tune in for, but that is going to play a role in when the NHL comes back. So you want players to be vaccinated, you want fans to be able to come in and be in attendance, and not worry about something happening a few weeks down the road and them saying, oh, that was an event that the NHL put on, and that's where that began. So January 1st is the target date, and the idea would be probably starting without fans in most arenas January 1st, and then by the time you reach the spring, say April, it's highly likely that most people would be able to attend. We'd be able to have arenas that are mostly full to full, and not so much concern at that point. So that's my way of saying, and I get it. I know everything these days, it's all a big argument, but I'm just saying, the NHL and professional sports in general, that's what they're going to be waiting for. Watch for the NBA, too. I noticed the NBA is taking their finals and dragging it out as long as possible. And I see that and I'm thinking, okay, so they're aware they're not going to start for a while. They're dragging these finals out. So, yeah, January 1st target start date. That makes some sense. That's in line with what was being reported, where it was being said just after Christmas, maybe Boxing Day. I know that the NBA's talked about starting on Christmas Day. I don't see it. Maybe, but we'll see. It's going to be interesting. OEL. You waiting for an OEL trade? He's not. Basically, he's told them through his agent, either you guys get him traded by Friday, or he's remaining in Arizona. So there's a deadline of Friday. That is the start of unrestricted free agency. And he's saying, if I'm still a member of the Arizona Coyotes on Friday, I'm not waiving for anybody. So he has not increased the number of teams he's willing to go to. It's still Boston or Vancouver. Boston and Vancouver, to this point, have not been able to work out a deal with Arizona that makes sense for both teams. And so we're still here. And I don't see any reason to think that we won't be here on Friday. Oliver Ekman-Larsson with the no movement clause has earned the right to do exactly this. This is what it's for. This is why players like to have that leverage. To say, okay, I've got this contract, I've got this stability, and if you're going to trade me, I have a say in it. And again, it doesn't really bother me. Ekman-Larsson is willing to waive it, but only for 2 locations. We'll see what happens. I want to say, too, with the draft today, I'm really interested where Askarov's going to go. Askarov has been all over the place on the mock drafts. The only reason I have him likely going to Carolina in mine is because that's the first team where I think you could really use a franchise goaltender. But in terms of his ability, he projects as being a franchise goaltender, as being the best goaltender out of the draft since Vasilevsky. And there's a lot of hype around him. And there are certain people who, Craig Button's got him top 5 in his mock draft. But I've seen on Hockey Prospect as well, where they've had Askarov as potentially being a top 5 pick, or at the very least a top 10. And yet, again, I know there will be general managers who are nervous about picking a goaltender, or maybe they feel like they don't need a goaltender right now. But it will be very interesting to see where he goes. Does he end up being in Carolina, or does he go somewhere else? And it's going to be fascinating to see where he gets picked. Like, for instance, let's just say Buffalo picked him. I think Buffalo fans will probably be upset, but only briefly, because I think Askarov's going to be an excellent NHL goaltender. I'm not saying he's going to be ready this season, but his numbers in the KHL have been excellent. So I guarantee you there's some general managers that are paying attention to his numbers out of the KHL and saying, yeah, maybe we want to take a chance with him. So we'll see. Now, for the Stanley Cup champions, if you're a Tampa Bay fan, apparently Julien Brisebois has decided he needs to get rid of some money, and he's letting teams know that they're going to aggressively be trying to dump money. Now, what's interesting is that about half of the NHL has no cap space to deal with right off the bat. That's why we're seeing the number of buyouts that we're seeing right now. So, if Tampa's looking to cut costs, it is possible. Okay, so an obvious pick would be Abdelkader's on waivers for a buyout from Detroit, right? So maybe, just maybe, Steve Yzerman's working on a deal to get Tyler Johnson out of Tampa. Maybe he's working to get Killorn and Johnson. Maybe for him, he's saying, all right, I've got a chance to pick up guys that I'm familiar with. It's going to cost us some money. I'm going to waive Abdelkader. I might get rid of a couple guys, and I might change the team completely. Now, according to reports from, again, Bob McKenzie, Hedman, I believe it was either McKenzie or Drager. I'm pretty sure it was McKenzie. Hedman, Kucherov, Vasilevsky, and Point are the untouchables. Now, you have to think that they're cutting these costs for the restricted free agents, that Sergachev, Chernak, and Cirelli are going to be ones they have to keep. But it is interesting that Johnson's apparently given a list of teams to Tampa to work with and say, all right, if you guys can work out a trade with one of these guys. And again, that's why when people say, well, he's not going anywhere, there's a no-trade clause, I always say, no, that's not what a no-trade clause means. It means that they can go to the player and say, hey, can you waive your no-trade? And the player will say, sure, and all right, here's some teams if you want to talk to them. Most players won't say no because, again, you don't want to be in a situation where you're not wanted. And that has happened before, and it gets kind of uncomfortable. So Johnson's given a list of teams to Tampa, and interestingly enough, of course, Stamkos' name would not appear on the 4 untouchables. And I mentioned this. I mentioned the potential of, well, buying him out wouldn't make any sense. And then people are like, why would you even talk about buying out Stamkos? There's a simple reason. Stamkos makes, his cap hit's $8.5 million a year, right? Which is good. That's a good cap hit for the player that Stamkos has been. But it saves you $8.5 million if you trade him, and he now has his cup ring, and he only had to play 2 minutes to get it. And that's it. So outside of those 2 minutes, Tampa didn't really need Stamkos. And I know how that sounds awful. I know that sounds awful to say, well, Tampa didn't really, but they didn't. And Braden Point's proven he can put a team on his back and win a Stanley Cup. So there's that. And, Kucherov, Hedman, Vasilevsky, it makes sense that those are the four. I think it's interesting that Palat's not on the list too, but Palat is far more replaceable than those four untouchables. So we'll see what happens with Tampa. We'll see if somebody goes, hey, so Stamkos is available? Interesting. Keep in mind, of course, that when he was potentially going to be a UFA some years back, there were a number of teams that were very interested, including Toronto. I know, Toronto fans are going to go, oh, could we get Stamkos? Sure. For Toronto, the cap will be $150 million. You can get Pietrangelo, you can get Stamkos. Just go nuts, you crazy kids. So, we'll see what happens, and because honestly, if they did find a way to trade Stamkos and they didn't have to do retaining any salary, and if he passes a physical with a new team, it might solve that problem entirely. Because they currently have $5 million in cap space. Not enough for their RFAs. But if they traded out Stamkos and didn't take money back, that would give them over $13 million in cap space. So that should be enough to keep everything else together. But we'll see what they do. And apparently Patrick Maroon, they're interested in keeping him, but he's going to have to wait until this is all settled out. So basically, they want to keep him, but they don't want to sign him until they know exactly how much money they're spending on everybody else, and then they can come back around to Patrick Maroon. But they do want to keep him on the team. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.